Thank you everyone for coming to the session this morning. I think we're running a little bit behind, but we can probably make that up. We're now going to have about 25 minutes to go through launching a design system into hyperdrive with Starshot's Experience Builder. So there's some credits here for some of the artwork that we've been using from the Starshot library. So hello, my name is Akhil. I work with Salsa Digital for the last 6 years, working between different roles from digital engagement and delivery to marketing and business development. Before that, I had 8 years with Department of Communications in the web team working on Drupal websites. So Salsa Digital, many of you may be familiar with Salsa Digital. We're the partner sponsor for DrupalSouth. We're also been around for about 21 years, 10 years working specifically with government, and I've worked on 100 plus government agency websites and working with design systems in particular the last 10 years, ranging from CivicTheme design system to also the Starshot demo design system that was revealed at Barcelona by Dries in the Dries note. We're also on the Starshot Council. So some of the other experience I've had with design systems is around the AUDS, Australian Government Design System, Victorian Government Design System, CivicTheme as it says there, and the Geoscience. So we've got quite a few different design systems that we've worked with other than CivicTheme, which most of you may know of. So does anyone else, just looking through the lights here, has anyone else worked with design systems in general or created a design system? I think this is a pretty common question we ask, and there are definitely, hands up, that's great. I'm going to just caveat the rest of this session, by the way. This is what we're going to cover today. I'm actually standing in for someone else. So while I look like I know everything, I may not. So I will try to take questions where I can, and if I need to, I might take some on notice and kind of come back to you. But today we'll be covering kind of what is Experience Builder, how to work with design systems, what design systems are, what's the SDC architecture, and how that's going to impact what we're working with, specifically around design systems. And then there's also some tips and recommendations from what we've found already working with the different design systems, in particular with Drupal CMS and SDC in particular. So, Experience Builder. I'm going to have a little bit of a video to show you what it actually looks like in building a page. So this is what Experience Builder kind of looks like at the moment. So you've got this kind of interface, you've got a web interface in particular, and you can actually kind of drag and drop and move things around and kind of edit the page layout specifically. So this is really good for landing pages, those kind of campaign pages where there's a lot of components, a lot of kind of more than just content on a page that can be managed within the components that are available in the library. So I'm going to try and play a quick video to give you an example of how we made that page. Let's see if this works. Okay. I'm going to speed this up a little bit. It's a 2-minute one, but we can go a little bit faster. Okay, so you can see there we can actually play a video. Yes, you can drag and drop things. So more unconventional to Drupal, right? You can actually now drag and drop different components onto the page. You can actually add content in there and design the page kind of in a live view. And that's kind of the power of the Experience Builder layer of, it's a bit slow, of what Drupal CMS is starting to do and adding that layer of Experience Builder. So with Drupal now, you've got Drupal 11 as the base, which is not going to change as it does. Then you've got Drupal CMS as the editing layer, and then you have the Experience Builder as a module or plugin to allow you to actually change and modify landing pages kind of on the fly. This now gives the power kind of to more the marketers, the non-technical people, to be able to change, update, and manage their own pages. And we'll go through how to build some of these components in a few minutes. But this is basically a landing page. You can see you can even change the columns, the type of cards, the components themselves. You can choose from a library of components, and I'll also cover that you can actually create custom sections on the page for more advanced users. There's a bit of a caveat. This is also going to be, this session in particular is actually delivered by Kristen Pohl at DrupalCon Atlanta. So I'm doing a version here for you guys as a bit of a sneak preview. So if you're going to Atlanta, I'm sorry. Okay, let's see if I can get out of this. I want to move to the next page. Okay, cool. Okay, so the Drupal Starshot vision. So firstly, just to kind of caveat Starshot. Is anyone familiar with the term Starshot? Heard of Starshot, Drupal Starshot? Yes. So basically, Drupal Starshot was the working title or the code name of Drupal CMS before it was launched in January a couple of months ago. So we kind of still have been kind of referring to it as Starshot because we've been using it for over a year now, but it really means Drupal CMS. So the idea of the Drupal Starshot or Drupal CMS vision was so that site builders without Drupal experience can easily build and launch engaging websites, Drupal websites. So with the Experience Builder, the Power Experience Builder, you can actually, and then Experience Builder is the XB, so the shorthand XB, will be able to enable site builders without Drupal experience to easily manage the theme, build out their websites using the browser itself. So you don't have to go into an admin or backend or development area. You can actually do things within the browser. So that was that demo that I showed you, and we'll go into how the components are made. So basically what it's trying to do is get the best of Layout Builder, the best of paragraphs, and then in-browser theming, and then using single directory components to be able to build out this, what is Experience Builder. So what you can do to add, what's actually in Experience Builder. So it allows you to add different things at the moment. So this is all a bit new. So you've got single directory components, you've got blocks, list views and system blocks, and then there'll be more things added, which will be like code components, sections, and overrides over that. So has anyone tried out the new Drupal CMS, which was launched in January? I think there were some links from drupal.org when Dries did his launch. No hands. One hand, two hands? Okay, good. It is very different. It's all going to be new. So now we've got Experience Builder, and then there's a concept of design system. So, you know, a design, some of you may be familiar with CivicTheme and other design systems. But the design system is really a collection of reusable components, and that's guided by clear standards to build consistent user interfaces. So we have Experience Builder, which will give you the power of doing as much as you want to do, but it still needs to be guided kind of UX and the front end, how it should look and how it should work within the whole site itself. So you'll have consistency of uniformity of the different components. You'll have efficiency of building out those components, and I'll show you some of those things later on. And then the scalability to be able to have the power of, and actually harness the power of the Experience Builder. And then collaboration across different teams when you're actually using and managing a site. Now, I'm not going to go through all the details on this particular page, but just showing you a bit of a history of the design system. So it was kind of invented or predates the internet. So design system as a concept was something that was kind of brought in at 94-ish. And then has obviously steadily grown with various different design systems that have come out since, and even up to today, and even going forward. So, you know, we're talking about different type of design systems like the Google ones, and I'll show you some examples. Looking at time. So, the ones that we're probably familiar with, we may be familiar with, is like the material design by Google. We've got Ant, which is the Alibaba group, their own e-commerce design system. Carbon, and then the US have their own US web design system. Very inventive. And then other Drupal design systems would be the Drupal CMS default one coming soon. So that was announced as a bit of a project earlier this year, so that'll be coming out shortly. Then there's UI Suite, Starshot demo design system, which is the one that was based on CivicTheme that we released in Barcelona, and then CivicTheme itself. And what we're working on in CivicTheme is kind of making that SDC compatible. So just to kind of quickly give you a preview, Starshot demo design system looked like this. It used a lot of the new Drupal branding and marketing that was launched late last year. We did the demo design system based on its kind of look and feel. So a lot of the components were converted into the design system, but then built into a demo site. So as an example, so CivicTheme. So CivicTheme as a design system includes two parts as a core: the Figma design library, so all the design and visual components, and then the storybook, the components that are built out in HTML. So they're the actual functional things. So you don't actually need to have a Drupal website to test out a design system, in this case for CivicTheme. You can just go straight to storybook and actually interact with each of the components in the library that they have. There are about 40 components that you can see and peel and test out the different combinations and configurations for it. So SDC architecture. So components. in particular with SCCs, like the components here are made up of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. They can be easily customized and reused across multiple pages and applications. For instance, hero components, testimonials, sliders, cards, and other buttons. Now, with single directory components, the example we've got here is some CivicTheme. They actually add a few more things. In this particular case, we added a YAML file. So with a single directory component, the component includes all these kind of areas. So we've got the YAML file, Twig, CSS, and JavaScript. And it's based on atomic design principles. The components then will have their own directories, and each component will actually have metadata, which is the YAML file to explain what that is and how it works. So anyone here familiar with SDC? Yes, a few of you. Excellent. Cool. So I'm now going to get into a bit more detail. So we have the different components, right? You've got a component in SDC, you've got a metadata. You've got the metadata for it, and it includes human readable name, the status, which could be either stable, obsolete, deprecated, or experimental, the required props, and a list of props and slots. I'm going to cover that in a second, what props and slots are, because they're quite important. But there's also the UX consideration. So at the moment, the metadata is unlimited, but considering UX and how much information you need to put in there, consider how that's going to work going forward. And then there is these attributes that are passed into the YAML. Now I mentioned props and slots. So props being properties, but in this case, props is what we're going to show and how to style that particular component and what it looks like. And that includes things like the title, the description, the type, which can be either any one of those conditions. We've got the format, we've got the enum, and you've got an options list there. And you can also include examples, so example content or example configurations as a way to show what it looks like. You've got the reference area and the text area, the different things that you have. And in the future, they're looking at putting either arrays or adding something like a CK editor in there. The other thing I mentioned was slots. Now, a slot is really just a placeholder to allow anything else to be added to a component. So this would be human readable title and description. The example would be having something that's, as I mentioned before, having something as an example that will show people what it could look like. And then in the future, there'll be a restriction of components. Now, this is quite an important part because right now there is no restriction to the slots in Drupal. So what that means is if you have a card, you've got the title and a link. If you have another slot there that's open, Fred, who only does his web publishing once a year, could add an entire hero component in there and forget that, we shouldn't be doing that. So at the moment, there are no restrictions, but there could be restrictions in the future. So props versus slots. So props are for predefined elements. There's a mapping one-to-one with a property or prop to the actual page. And slots provide flexibility in the design itself. And as I mentioned, it could actually be too flexible because you can literally add anything into a slot. And I'll show you what the downsides to that in a second. So slots can also be confusing because you can add slots to a page and then users may not be clear on what actually should be going into there. So here's an example of a component. It's a callout component. And you can actually approach this in multiple different ways with this with the new Experience Builder. So for one example, you could have the props. You can have the property for the title, the text that you can see there, link 1 and 2. And there are no slots. You could also have props for the title. You can also have slots for the content. And then you can have a mix. You can have some props and some slots. And I'll show what that looks like. So here's the example of a card. Now, you can see the colors. Yes? More or less. OK, so this is red. Red outline means that they're all props. So we've got a property for the title, the body, the links. It's pretty straightforward. You can see them on the side. There's even a version for the dark theme. However, you can also go with the mix. So you can have properties for the title. You can have then slots for the content. And in this case, the content's actually pre-built. You can see that says Atlanta. Yep, Atlanta callout. And that's just been as a slot added to this component. And then you can have a combination. So here, the red ones represent the props, and the purple are the slots. So here we've got title, description, the links that we had before, but we're also actually mixing up a few different slots here to have a slot for the top section, a slot for the middle section, and a slot for the bottom section. So here's where you could see if someone was adding a slot to the bottom and added an entire card, it would kind of break this particular section here altogether. So that's why having that too much flexibility can be too much power. So just looking at time. Okay, I'm good on time actually. So recommendations and tips. So what we've found in working with even just the demo design system is that, you know, looking at the UX side of things is just making sure that when you're building out your design system with Experience Builder and having that flexibility in the different components is to make sure that you're testing things, right? So you may want it to look and work a certain way, but it may not work that way. But the real experience here is on the developer or authoring experience. So while the users probably won't even notice the difference between the components, the real experience is around the administration side of things. So when you're building the components and deciding between props and slots, how are the actual administrators or authors going to be able to manage that? Are they familiar with how many slots or what they can actually put in the slots? Or do you want them to be guided through that process to go, look, just add the specific props in this case, a title, and give them limited options for the slots? So there's quite a bit there in depending on how your site works, the maturity of the team managing it, and how often they would do that. So whether they're experienced or power users or just new to using this kind of the marketing team there. So be clear on the components and the prop names. So this is again coming down to how you set everything up, and the design system will actually manage that. And then that's going to be spread and working through the entire site. You can actually combine or recommend to combine similar components so that it's easier to find and manage. You can also limit options and components. So in some cases in a component, you may only want props and a couple of slots. In other ones, you may want more, just depending on how the site's set up and where you're actually putting those particular components on a landing page. Make sure that the placeholders that you might put in there, information could be useful, and also leverage the slots carefully, as I mentioned before. And one of the other things is simple styling options. One of the things we found with the padding, for instance, is do we add the padding to a component? So adding an allowance above and below, because when you have everything together, it kind of just butts up together. Or do you actually add a component which is padding, right? And then you can actually adjust that between the components. So there's a few different ways to approach that. As advanced users, you know, this is a fairly simple, but can be the components can be quite flexible. You can add basic things like header and text and buttons, but you can also have containers with slots that have columns. So you can add more dimension to your content, make that a bit more interesting as well, and more complex or more interactive. And as I mentioned before, you can actually create sections as well. So if you have a panel, for instance, that you want to reuse across a site, for advanced users, they can actually create a section. So you can build out your component, you can name it and label it, and then again, you can use it elsewhere in the pages and elsewhere in the site. That way, when other authors come in, they can actually just call that section, which is a kind of built panel, and they can reuse that. So that's quite handy. And then for developers, you know, good machine names, minimizing the theme regions. So you don't want people to be able to start adding components to the header section and putting things right above the title of the nav area, because obviously that'll break and not look great, or at the footer. So kind of minimizing the regions that you can theme. Also using the default content modules and recipes, and then leveraging good global theme settings. So what's next for Design Systems Experience Builder? So right now, Experience Builder is still in development. It is target. The target is for July 1st from the Drupal team. So we'll keep our ears and eyes open for what the updates are. And I think Dries will be doing one at Atlanta as an update. And they'll be doing the demo there that we're also been working on. I think Alan here has been working on it with Kristen in our team. But coming in the future could be token support, CK editor integration, content type templates, which would be pretty good. And then slot restrictions. As I mentioned, right now it's unrestricted. Code edits, creating component lists via the UI, JavaScript components, and potentially more. So you can try Experience Builder now. There are a couple of different ways. There is the fastest way to do that, which is the Experience Builder demo. There's links here. I can make this presentation will be available afterwards. You can use the links there. You can also have a look at the Starshot demo design system that was launched in Barcelona. That's kind of a vanilla version on Drupal 11. And coming soon will be the Drupal Forge design system itself, the actual Experience Builder. So now bringing it back to CivicTheme. So at the moment, CivicTheme, we are looking to make this compatible with SCC. So we're working through the discovery, which is kind of done. At the moment, the Starshot demo design system helped us kind of understand what's coming up and what the Experience Builder could look like. We've done some research and strategy. We've even done some proof of concepts. So at the moment, we've got the user outreach in progress. And then very soon, the project will start, I think, actually mid this month. So next week, I think, apparently, is going to be our project to convert the STC into the CivicTheme. And then eventually, the next part will be to do the Experience Builder integration. So if you want to follow any of the updates that we've got in CivicTheme, we've got a few channels and information there about contacting and following us. And of course, contribute where you can. I think I'm well ahead of time. Ooh, 5 minutes, 20 minutes. We're ahead. Even more ahead than I thought. Thank you. So I will have questions here, but I'll warn you, may or may not be able to answer all of them, but I have got Alan Cole here off to the side who's been working on Experience Builder as well. So any questions? Ooh. No questions. Everyone knows everything. Okay. Well, we can probably... Oh, there is a question. It's really hard to see. If you can call that out, yes, that'd be good.
If we jump in and start playing this now, what happens when the real version comes along? Is it going to wipe out everything and put into it, or is it just kind of recreated?
It's a very good question. In terms of using it now, if you were to download and use it yourself, it would just be a local project, right? So I mean, you'd have to either maintain your changes, but it also depends on what comes out in the future. So it's a bit tricky at the moment until everything's released because we're having the same problem. We can't predict what the team will actually put out. But as best, you could probably work on it and then work out whether you want to continue with what you have or whether the system is that different that you just rebuild from scratch once it is released. Is my best answer. Any other questions? Excellent. Thank you very much for your time. Oh, sorry, there is one. Sorry, right at the back. Sorry.
Do you anticipate working with GovCMS to make it available on their platform?
Excellent question. I'm not am I qualified to answer this? Oh. Al's up here from GovCMS.
That's it, yeah. Key for the future. Let's see what comes down the road.
Yes, yeah. So eventually, yes, we'll look at it. I know that GovCMS are always keenly looking at the developments coming out for Drupal CMS, and we'll be working with them as much as we can, and others, other agencies and vendors, to work with them to kind of make things available for everyone. I think now you can clap. Thank you very much.